at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes.
Tribute to
America, God shed His grace on thee.
Can't provide for the family. I want to ask God, what is God going to do about that? Sometimes I want to ask God why so many babies and young children are treated so poorly in our society. And what is God going to do about that? Sometimes I want to ask God why we still do not treat each other as true brothers and sisters of this earth, wanting each of us to have that American dream and willing to help each of us to obtain that dream. And what is God going to do about it? I said I sometimes want to ask these questions, but I fear not, for fear God would ask me these same questions. And today I'm asking you. Whenever I give a talk, I always like to start with my reflection from the coroner's office. What have I really learned in the time that I've been in the coroner? In my first few months, people would come into the office with tears in their eyes and heaviness in their hearts and sorrow about them. And I said, that's to be expected, because they just lost a loved one. But what I've learned is those individuals who come into the office with those tears and sorrow and heaviness are people who wish they could say just one more time, Mother, I love you. Father, I appreciate you. Sister, forgive me. Brother, I forgive you. My reflection is heal your personal relationships on a daily basis. Heal your personal relationships on a daily basis. My grandfather used to say, tomorrow's not promised. And as your coroner, I'm here to tell you today, tonight is not promised for some. There are 12 of your colleagues who did not come home. We can only pray that they heal all of their personal relationships. When I think about Safety Act, we did a little research. What are we talking about? As tonight we talk about 12, and I heard someone say, well, last year it was 27. Boy, the numbers have really come down. But we go back into history and we look at back to 1970 when OSHA started. Almost 14,000 of your brethren, American workers, did not come home. People say, oh, what a high number. It certainly has come down to last year about 5,800. But there were times when there were 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 American workers who did not come home. Tonight we mourn and celebrate these 12. These 12 workers and thousands of others did not come home so that you can go home tonight, so that your children can go home tonight, and your future grandchildren can go home tonight. When we look at the numbers, back in 1970, for every 100,000 workers, 18 died. Last year in 2007, 2 years ago, when the statistics are available, that number was down to 4. What a great, great achievement. When we look across this country, 30 states, and we're proud to say that Ohio was one of the 30 states in which there was a drop in the death of workers. 19 states had an increase, and 1 state, Connecticut, the numbers were the same. Majority of the accidents occur in transportation and highway injuries. Last year in 2007, the year that we're using the statistics, most of those incidents were down except for falls and assaults and homicides in the workplace. It is strange, you go back in history, you look at the injuries, and there were falls and hit by objects, but most recently we're now talking about homicides occurring in the workplace. The 4 most frequent work-related fatal fatalities from 92 to 2007 were highway incidents, homicides, falls, and struck by an object. When we look at employment, 54% of the workforce is male, 46% of the workforce is female, yet nationally, 92% of people who die in the workplace are males, and only 8% are females. The most common accidents for women to die from are highway incidents, homicides, and falls, but for men, is exposure to harmful chemicals and contact with objects or equipment. We've seen more Hispanic and Latinos enter our workforce, and their numbers have really increased in the past 15 years. But the most interesting aspect of that is those Hispanics and Latinos who are from a foreign country make up 66% of the fatalities, and those who were born in this country only make up a third of the Hispanic Latino injuries. The most common country for someone to come to who's Hispanic or Latino is Mexico. And the age range, if you're less than 44, their average, national average, is less than that of the national average. Those above 44 tend to have a higher rate, with those individuals 65 and over, for every 100,000, 9 of them die. Those are all the raw numbers. What does it really mean? It means that America is a safer place because you, as union people, stood up. Not just for the union, you stood up for America, and you've never been thanked. When I think about these statistics and other things, I look around the room, and I wonder, a few years ago, this place was doubly packed. I look around the room and I don't see as many union hats. I don't see as many union badges and shirts of the union. And I know many of you that have been in the struggle for a long time have had to argue with the younger workers who come in when things are pretty good. The problem is that people forget the struggle of every organization. Whether it's the union struggle, whether it's the civil rights struggle, the young people sometimes can't appreciate and don't know that history. How many times have you heard someone say, why do we need a union? Tell them that in the early 30s and 40s, thousands of workers died, and today it's down to 5,000. How many times you heard someone say, union dues are too expensive? Tell them that the American people have health care. They have decent health care so that children and the wife and the husband can live the American dream healthier because they have health insurance, but that came and put on the table and pushed by the union. You stood up for the union, but you also stood up for America, but you've never been thanked. When people say, why do we still need a union today? Tell them about dental care. And still, how many people in this country do not have dental care? How many young children in Cincinnati public schools have I seen who sit in the classroom, they can't learn because their jaws are swollen, their teeth are hurting, and they just don't have money or health care to get that fixed. And that child can't learn. That child is suffering. But those individuals that have health care was part of that union struggle, who put that on the table and would never pull it back, who put it on the table and negotiated and said, this is important. And once that was on the table, other companies across this country adopted that. You stood up not just for the union, you stood up for America, and you've never been thanked. Now we're in tough times. Last week I saw an interview of one of the sailors from the Alabama, the ship in which the pirates attacked. The captain gave himself up, and then the Navy SEALs took out the pirates and they were saved. And when they interviewed one of the members of the crew, they said, how did you do it? How could you survive that? How did you fight the pirates back? They had AK-47s, they had guns, you had nothing. How did you guys do this? And he said, I'm an American. I'm a union man. We work together, we get the job done. You can tell, I sit there, I smile. I said, oh, I'm going to use that round to give this talk. But you can see that he had pride in being a union man. And so many union people do not have that pride because they don't understand the history. Because they go home every night. And these 12 won't go home anymore. Today, as we struggle, people are worried about the jobs. People are worried about the jobs who typically in the unions didn't have to worry about the jobs. We bought into this. We got to be global to survive. We must ship wash machines, work over out of the United States. Those companies have forgotten that America was built on the backs of union labor. They forget that it was union people who built the machines and then bought the machines. You can't buy if there's no jobs. So you can ship these jobs across the country. Who's going to buy in this country? You don't have workers. Who's going to give them the health care, the dental care? Who cares about the safety at work, which has always been primary for the union? This isn't a day for the unions to put their heads down. Today is a day for the unions to rise, as you have in the past. When health was an issue, you rise. When safety was an issue, you rise. When dental care was an issue, you rise. And today with this economy, it is the union that must come up with a solution. You cannot sit back and let them dictate. If the problem is in the factory, then the solution's in the factory, and you have demonstrated for the past hundreds of years that you can contribute. You can be the backbone of America, and you will find those solutions. You have stood up, not just for the unions. You stood up for America, but you've never been thanked. People don't understand when they have all these benefits, whether they're white collar, blue collar, yellow collar, or no collar, that it came from the hard works in the backs of the union. People forget that when the first people who stood up and wanted to organize were whipped, hoses were put upon them, many of them were beaten and killed and fired, and their families punished because all they wanted was their American dream. There was a time in this country where a person could graduate from high school, serve their country, and come back and get a good union job and own a home, send their children to college. There was a time in this country when a person could drop out of school, get a good union job, and own a home and send their kids to college. Oh, it's tough today, but you've had a tougher fight. You've had a tougher fight, and you've always won. We, the people of this country, need you to share that leadership, to stand up with that pride that you are a union person. You are Americans. You are union people. You work together and you know how to get the job done. And today, this one simple human being says, thank you.
Oh my God! Awesome, awesome.
Yes. All right. Told you in the introduction.
That'll be on the editorial page.
Dr. Owens, right here.
We appreciate you coming to this year's Workers' Memorial. And I want to reflect back on the snuffing of the candles and the symbolism of that, and the ringing of the bell. And as the ring and the noise grows faint, we never can forget our fallen brothers and sisters. But most importantly, where we're heading out in the community, and what we're going to do as working men and women, as labor, to make sure that we ensure that there's a safe workplace for our children and our grandchildren. I enjoy reading books by John Maxwell, and my memberships heard me say this before. And there was a quote a gentleman asked Helen Keller once. So what would be worse than being born blind? And her response was being born with eyesight and having no vision. I think Dr. Odell Owens gave us a little bit of vision to head out in the community and do our work. Because as the ring of the bell grows faint, we can't forget those who've fallen before, after us, and the work we have before us. Really appreciate you coming to this year's Workers' Memorial, the speakers, and what we've done, and what we're going to continue to do, and the support that we receive from you. With that, with the Workers' Committee that put this together, would everybody stand up that had a part in putting this together this year.